Hey, you're still around. That's good news. Now, many of you might be wondering, if I become a Python developer, what can I do with my career? And you know what? Python, I think, besides maybe JavaScript, offers some of the best opportunities for employment and options for different ways that you can go in your career. For example, you might want to become a software engineer. A software engineer is a person that builds software, builds programs, and code to solve real-world problems. If you want to work for a company like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, you might apply to become a software engineer and use Python in your coding interviews to solve coding problems and get in those big companies. Or you might want to apply for a job that's a Python developer. That's a very generic term, but a Python developer is essentially somebody that solves problems that a company has with Python. So it can be many different things. Or maybe you're a research analyst. And I have a friend who has a PhD in microbiology. And he uses Python because he analyzes data that his lab gets with Python. Or you might want to be a data analyst. That is similar to research analyst. They use whatever data that a company has and analyzes it to make business decisions. Again, we can use Python to analyze these things. Or you might want to become a data scientist. You can think of a data scientist as a level up from a data analyst. They can do what most data analysts do, but they also have really strong mathematical, statistical, programming backgrounds in order to create algorithms and study data in order to create perhaps new models. Or there's even a backend developer or a web developer that works on building, for example, API services. You can use tools like Django and Flask, things we'll talk about in this course, to build web applications. Or you might want to do testing and automation. Testing and automation can be as simple as testing a website or a web app, or it can be testing a mobile application and writing scripts to simulate user behaviors and test that a company's product works. And of course, a really popular one right now is machine learning. Creating machine learning models from lots and lots of data to create these models that can predict or perhaps create something useful for a company. The options are almost endless, and it can be overwhelming if you're just starting out. Luckily for you, in this course, we're actually going to touch on each one of these topics. And in our over 10 projects that we're going to build, we're going to experience what each one of these roles might do. So that at the end of the course, if you find something that piques your interest, well, you can pursue it further. But this way, we get to dip our toes in each one of these careers and see what you might like, what you might find interesting. But the beauty is that by learning Python, it opens up a whole world of possibilities. Possibilities of a really good career because it is a very valuable skill. All right, I hope you're excited. You're down a good path. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. What do I do if I don't have enough experience? What if I'm underqualified for a job? Well, first of all, you should have this mentality in mind when applying to jobs, and apply to jobs that you feel you are underqualified for. If a job is asking you to do something that you already feel confident, then you should ask yourself, what am I going to learn in this job? Am I going to learn actually? Is this job going to put things on my resume that will make me get better and get a better position in the future? Or am I just going to do the same thing that I already know what to do or how to do it? Finally, you have to keep in mind that job postings are put in order to weed out the weak candidates. I have seen way too many of these created by non-technical people or just making jobs sound tougher than it really is to remove junior developers or engineers from applying. So ask yourself, is this job going to be tough? Good. Then that is what you want. That's what you should be doing. Do you feel confident you are very qualified for this job? Okay, then maybe you should push yourself and apply to a job that's more difficult than you think. Every application should be a long shot. If you're applying to something that you're 100% qualified for, where is your room to grow? So dream big. But in order to dream big, you might have a bit of a roadblock. What if you don't have enough experience? See, I don't love resumes, and I don't think a lot of people do either. But sometimes without a resume, you cannot get an interview. And in order to have a good resume, you need to have something to put on it, like great experience. Here's the catch though. How can you have good experience if you're just getting started? It's like you have no hope if you're a beginner or if you don't have enough work experience because you're just out of school or you're changing careers. Well, not quite. As with everything, there's the regular way of doing things, then there's the smart way. You see, experience doesn't come just from working at another company. There are many ways that you can demonstrate experience without a past job. And here you'll find my favorite ways to show and prove you can get the job done. You won't have to do every single one of them, but 2 out of 4 of these, or even better, 3 out of 4, will be great at showcasing on your resume and make you stand out. So let's go in order and see how we can do this. The first one is GitHub. GitHub is a great way to demonstrate that you actually code, that you've built projects. The number one thing you can do is to start making commits and making sure that you have a good history of things that you've done. And by the way, if you're wondering how I got this cat picture in here, I'll show you a little trick in the next exercise to make your contribution look a little bit nicer and busier in case you're just getting started and you don't have a good past history. Another way to improve your GitHub profile or to just add more experience is contributing and participating in open source projects. For example, I've created a Zero to Mastery organization where we have a ton of open source projects by the community that you can contribute to. And they're made specifically for you to mess up, make mistakes. Nobody's going to yell at you. These are just fun projects that are open source that you can contribute to. And you can do as much or as little as you want, but this will improve your experience in contributing to open source projects, and it's something you can add to your resumes. Now, contributing to open source projects, recruiters love seeing this because this demonstrates that you can work with others and also with something like GitHub and version control. All right, let's look at the next one. The next one is website. If you're especially a full stack or a front-end developer or even a designer, you should have your own website where you can showcase your skills. This, again, is something you can speak about in your interview and about how you built the website, or it gives you a good way to talk about your past projects. Now, you're asking yourself, Andre, am I going to have to build a whole new website and waste a bunch of time? Well, not really. Let me show you a couple of tricks. You see, you don't need to build your own website from scratch. There's a ton of free templates like Creative Tim here that just gives you a nice template for you to use and fill in with your information. We can also look at this one, and again, free templates that you can use. I especially like the mountain template, and you can see that, you can customize this to your own and make it look professional, and it's already designed nicely and also customized for different experiences, such as mobile, tablet, and in a day, you can have your own website. And just to show you how you shouldn't really spend too much time on your own website, one of my favorite people to follow is Kevin Kelly. He is very, very popular among the tech community, and he's just a overall really smart thinker. And you can see his website over here. It's very simple. Nothing exaggerated, very, very clean but small, very basic layout. And This is to show you that you don't need some crazy animations, make it all flashy to stand out. As long as you have a personal website, it just shows that you actually spend time building it and doing something that most people wouldn't do. Another thing that I want to show you is, for example, the job board that we have for all of my students. And this is, again, another open source project that the community built. If we just search through, let's say, Toronto developers here, and we go to Christine Aki, I hope I'm saying the last name right, you can see how simple yet beautiful her portfolio is. If we go to About Me, just a nice little bio with links to her profile. If we go to projects, we see some of their projects. And this is something that she can put on her resume and immediately stand out from the crowd. And it also gives her an opportunity to list projects that she can talk about when she gets to an interview. All right, let's look at the next topic. 1 to 2 big projects. Now, you can't really fake experience. If you've never built anything beyond a to-do list or a Hello World app, you simply will not be able to get very good jobs. However, most people think having 100 projects is the way to go. So they do a project a day and build small projects, many small, tiny projects to have 30 of them. And they start building all these projects that are very, very simple. Now, that's not actually impressive. I mean, it shows that you're working hard and coding along. But if I'm a recruiter and you show me a project of maybe tic-tac-toe, well, I don't really care. That's something that anybody can build with a bit of coding experience in a day or two. Frankly, no recruiter or interviewer is going to check out all your 30 projects. Most of the time, we want to hear your most difficult or the hardest, biggest project you've worked on. Instead of spending your time on these small little projects, spend your time on 1 or 2 big projects. For example, in other courses that I teach, we built a face recognition app. And this app, well, it has a front end using React.js, a back end where we have a RESTful API server with Express. We've deployed it to Heroku. We've created session management with authenticated routes. We store user information such as username and also hashed passwords securely in our database on Postgres. We've deployed our app with Docker, and we've also used Redis for session management and caching. Now, all of that may not mean a lot to you, but having something like a one big project that you can talk about all these things will make you sound a lot more impressive than somebody that just builds a ton of tiny projects. So focus on that. Have 1 to 2 big projects that you can show off, makes you stand out, and it's also going to give you something to talk about during the interview. And put it up on your website or create its own website, and you immediately can put this as the first item on your resume. Because here's the thing. If you don't have work experience, if we go back to the resume we used in the exercise, remember this resume? Well, if you had no work experience, maybe for work experience, you can say something like JavaScript developer or web application developer and talk about how you build your project here. Because to a recruiter, it doesn't really matter if you worked at a certain company building an application or on your own. Or that could be a little bit vague too. They don't need to know that. They just need to know that you built things that are real, that are big and complicated, and you solved hard problems. So having 1 or 2 big projects that you can list on your experiences is a great way to add to your resume if you don't have enough past work experience at companies. And I have a few students who have actually used this technique to get interviews, even though they just learned how to code 6 months ago. And then finally, we have the blog post or blog. Let's have a look at what I mean by that. This is another thing you can include in your resume, especially if it's related to a technology you're using or the company is using. For example, I have here my Medium profile. And Medium.com allows anybody around the world to just post a blog post. And it's very popular with the tech community, so there's a lot of tech-related posts that you can write on Medium. And there's other platforms like this. What if you wrote a blog post about a specific technology that the company you're applying for is using? Or some sort of a technical problem that they're facing? By doing that and just adding a link to that blog post, it gives you, again, another leg up to most people. And the great thing about platforms like this is that, well, if we go to one of my articles here, you can post it to what we call publishers. And publishers allow your post to be discovered by others. And it's very simple to do. You can write a blog post on Medium in a day and submit it to a place like HackerNoon, and lots of people see it. And as soon as you show this to a recruiter or an interviewer, again, it automatically shows that you know what you're talking about, or at least it makes you stand out from the rest. And you can do this with YouTube videos as well, but I prefer writing because it's a lot faster and it looks a lot more professional. So let's just review here. What happens if you don't have enough experience? Well, all of these 4 points allow you to gain that experience or show that you have experience without actually having traditional work experience. All you need to do is start something on your own and build something like a project or a portfolio or a blog post. This only shows initiative, but you can focus this project on solely getting your interviews, or you can participate in a hackathon or contribute to open source projects. By taking this initiative, you're doing more than most people that hope to just land an interview by sending a generic resume. You'll immediately stand out from the crowd and give you something to put on your resume that, again, is different than the average developer. Plus, you have the added benefit of something to talk about in your actual interview. Remember, nothing is given to you for free. And luck is for those who rather wait than go after what they want. So by simply building something just for fun, such as a side project, you're showing how self-motivated and ambitious you are. Experience doesn't mean on-the-job experience. Write about your portfolio projects. Maybe talk about your website and how you built it. Talk about your GitHub profile, maybe a hackathon you participated in, or open source projects you've worked on. Write a blog post on a specific technology that the company you're applying to is using. All of them answer this question: do you have experience? Finally, there are many things that you can add that are not developer related, but can make you a great employee. For example, did you work as an instructor at a camp? Well, you can now add ability to manage people and communicate well with others. Any skill that is related to getting the job done can be included. Also, if you have only had 6 months of coding experience, don't show that on the resume. That doesn't mean to lie, but to hide that information. Because a recruiter only glances at your resume. They won't care if you're the best developer in the world if they just see 6 months experience. That's too risky for them. Your resume will most likely be discarded no matter how good of a developer you are. So remember, resumes are only good to get your foot in the door. By tweaking your resume to show that you have experience so that the recruiters thinks, oh, interviewing this person is low risk because they know what they're talking about, is a good way of doing it. Do you have past experience? Have you made good decisions in the past? And have you worked on a challenging problem and solved them? If you're able to answer yes to that, well then, a recruiter is most likely going to ask you for an interview. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Hey there, surprised to see you there. So we just finished an entire section on Python. We learned the Python language. We learned the syntax, and we can write Python now. That's awesome. But here's the thing. Do you feel ready for the real world? Do you know what to do with this newfound skill? You see, when you're first learning a language, a really hard jump is to learn the syntax and the rules of the language, and then understanding how you can use that in the real world to make your life better, to improve a product, to create value for a company that you work for. And a lot of developers have this crossroads that they encounter once they learn their first language. And that is, what now? What projects do I build? How is this useful? Where can I use Python? If you've gotten this far in the course, this slide should make sense to you by now. Because if I asked you the question, where can you write Python code and have it work? The answer should be pretty obvious, right? Because if we have a Python file or multiple files, that is modules, and we have a Python interpreter or a compiler, then by having these two things, we can run them anywhere that has a machine, that has a computer. We can run it on our own computers, our own laptops, like we have been throughout the course. We can even run Python code on mobile. Again, as long as we have an interpreter and some Python scripts, we can run those on mobile. And if you Google running Python on mobile, you'll see just how to do that. You can run Python on servers. And servers at the end of the day are just computers. So any computer, any machine that understands ones and zeros is able to run Python code as long as we have these two pieces. And this is where the power comes in. The power is that we now are able to use Python to do the tasks that as humans maybe we're not as good as machines. That is, automating things, doing things that are really repetitive, doing them really fast. That's why machines are so powerful. Maybe they're not as creative as humans. Maybe they can't speak or write fictional novels. But what they're really, really good at are calculations, simple tasks that they can do thousands, millions, billions of times in a matter of seconds, something that humans can't do. And we use Python to help us as humans to be more productive, to create things so that our machines run our Python code and make our lives easier. And throughout the next couple of sections, we're going to try and answer that for you. That is, we're going to show you where you can apply Python, whether it is to your day-to-day life, whether it is to work for a company, or maybe you want to create your own startup. We're going to show you how you can apply the knowledge that you've just gained into different projects, your own personal projects, for example. Because this is where Python shines. Python is one of the most popular programming languages because it can be applied to lots of things. How many things? Well, we can do web development. We can do image processing. We can send emails with Python. We can even send texts with Python. We can do machine learning with Python. We can create our own Twitter bots. We can do data visualization and data analysis. We can do something called data scraping. We can just do any general scripting with Python. We can do automation, and we can process files like PDFs, Excel files, and many others. And we're actually going to show you and build projects around all of these topics in the upcoming sections. I know, very exciting, seems kind of overwhelming. But the goal is, now that we have the foundation of Python, I want to show you where we can apply the skill so that by the end, we have all the tools necessary for you to dominate the world as a Python programmer and have this tool that you can utilize in anything that you want. It's a bold statement, but it's very exciting, and I think you're going to really like these next sections. Let's get started.